I feel something pushing. I'm going to try to behave. And so what he uses then is a prophetic utterance. But the prophetic utterance has to bring with it now vision. Because the prophetic utterance is coming from a vessel that God uses to say to you in various aspects of your living that God has his hand on you. It could simply be a grandmother or a mother or a relative that God uses who simply comes in the normalness of your everyday existence and say, you know, it's something about you that I believe God has something special for you to do. The person didn't have any episcopalial title. They were just simply someone that God reached out of the clear blue sky and put in them a revelation that there is something in you that God has placed in you, and I am praying for you. It now becomes a seed that's planted in your heart, so that the day that you begin to have visions, you can associate the vision to a happening that took place somewhere in the history of your existence. And immediately it gives you a certain amount of assurance that there is some truth to what I'm feeling, because somebody else had felt it before me. And in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, let everything be established. But now, because somebody says it, you have to engage it for yourself. Because even though their mouth has spoken, it doesn't move the enemy, because he doesn't care who announces what God is going to do with you. He only cares when you announce what God is going to do with you. Because once you come into the knowledge of what God has ordained for you, the enemy moves to abort everything that God has set in your path to do. Can I preach it another way? As long as Jesus was being protected by his parents, and remember, the first attack that Matthew records of Jesus was not on the cross. His first attack was when he was a baby, and Herod sent for the wise men to ask, where is this Jesus that the star you saw represented? Let me tell you something about God. God will protect you before he calls you. Because the enemy will come after you, not when you declare you have a word from the Lord, but the enemy will come after you with a prophetic word, because he wants to abort your mission before you even started. I feel like preaching. Now, if the enemy will come after you before you started, then how much more will he be after you get going? And I want to say to somebody in here, at the cost of you getting mad, there are 2 kinds of people in the world. There are those who are on the cross, and there are those who are looking up at the cross. So if you don't want to have a cross, stay looking up at the cross. But if God has laid hands on you, then pick up your cross and follow me. I feel like preaching here. I just come to challenge somebody because I've been challenged. It's true now then that you will find that some of the most spectacular moves of God is seen in calling people. Because now I am convinced that the calling and its magnanimity is in direct proportion to the size of the assignment. If there is a quiet calling, there's a little assignment. But if there is a humongous assignment, there's going to be a magnificent calling. I've got to call you in such a manner that when all hell breaks loose on you, you can look back on your call and say, in spite of how many devils are trying to hinder me, I know this is where God placed me, and I'm staying. Somebody. I'm talking to somebody that's getting ready to surprise the world with who they are. And I'm going to tell you, like I told you some years ago, when you finally come out and you finally start walking in the purpose God gave you, the people around you are going to ask, where have you been? I feel like preaching here. We've been waiting for you a long time. Where have you been? I've been waiting for somebody a long time. I think I'm going to find out too. Where have you? Anyway, that's personal. Now, it is possible then you have to begin with the call to enormous purpose. And you cannot be called to enormous purpose without tremendous visions. And it is the anointed that recruits, because the tremendous vision brings with it an anointment, an anointing. I thought you'd catch that, which is endorsed by prophetic utterance. So the prophetic utterances then cannot be applicable to the person who does not have the vision, because I can't anoint the visionless, because it's going to take the vision that's going to hold the anointed in the place that he must stay. Snakes are in the place like Judas, but here is where I have been placed. The demons are all around me. Every now and then angels minister to me, but here is where I must stay. I can't get off this road, because this is the road that leads to my destiny, and I have to stay here even though I got relatives that don't like me, friends that get in my way, loved ones, and a woman that I got in my bosom who's trying to kill me every day. Get out of here, Delilah. I got somewhere to go. I feel something happening. Can I take my time? The prophetic utterance then will only find strength in the individual who receives the vision. And so prophecy must bind anointing to vision. This is where all the prophets began, and all those who were prefigured for purpose. And I'll go further to say that the Abrahamic covenant prophetically ensured leaders who did not receive the redemptive utterance that announced Jesus' ministry. Why? Because the amount of prophecy is contingent on the magnitude of the assignment. Can I talk a little bit about that? It was Isaiah who saw him high and lifted up. And the Bible said his train filled the temple, which tells me that God was not in the temple, because he couldn't be in the temple if his train filled the temple, which means Isaiah saw him high and lifted up, so high that even his train completely filled the house of worship, which means no matter how you worship him, he's bigger than your worship. No matter how you fall out all you want to, he's bigger than you falling out, because his train filled the temple. The first thing that Isaiah thought was, woe is me, for I am undone. Because anybody who sees a vision of this magnitude is going to die. But he was not seeing the vision to die. He was seeing the vision to get busy. So all of a sudden somebody cried out, who shall we send? Who will go for us? And the visionary cries out, here am I, send me. There is going to be an event in your life that's going to separate you from everybody else. And the question I rose to ask you is, are you going to stay separated? Or are you going to run back to the crowd when they start talking about you? I feel a breakthrough coming. Give somebody a high five for the first time and say, neighbor, are you going to stay? Are you going to stay? I want to talk to somebody, and I want to ask, are you the staying kind? Or do you run out because things get uncomfortable? The revelation then, and don't talk about Ezekiel, and certainly I don't have time to talk about Jeremiah, because Jeremiah said, Lord, you deceived me because you were stronger than me. So God promptly told him, before you were formed in your mother's womb, I was dealing with you, because I have a mission for you to do. I just want to take a little time out and thank God for the 40 years of what he's used me to do. I'm not saying I've done anything great. I'm just saying, Lord, I want to thank you for carving me out of my mother's womb and not leave me running around in circles trying to figure out what my life is all about, but putting me in the path. And now, Lord, I'm glad you sent the question, are you going to stay? Oh, I feel the Spirit of God. Give somebody a high five and tell them, I'm staying, I'm staying, I'm staying, I'm staying, I'm staying. Touch somebody else and say, I'm not a quitter, I'm not a quitter, I'm not a quitter. I got to stay. I got to stay. Yet Jesus was perfectly all right until at the age of 13 or 12 rather, he jumped up and said, wist ye not that I be about my Father's business? I'm here to tell you, children of God, the last 21st century, this 21st century Christian is walking around talking about what they deserve. And you're talking about being king's kids. And we have let the capitalistic religious preachers bring us into feeling like, as a child's kid, what you deserve is a phantom. Deserve a 40